Tony Tonkin here from the Child Protection Party. As you may or may not be aware, a report came out from Victoria a few days ago that highlighted the issues that sit within child protection, and they're horrific. And we as the Child Protection Party need to do something about it. So we need your voice to come together with us so that we can combat some of these extraordinary findings of this particular report. Now, there are two aspects to this report. There's the one in relation to domestic violence, and I'll just go through some of that with you in a moment. And there is the other issue which relates to the number of deaths of children who were either known to the department or who were in the care of the department. I just need to be clear that the death of any child, the maltreatment of any child, is horrific to us all. And that when we see it laid out bare, like it has been in these reports, it's a strong indicator that there is something wrong, not just with the system, but the people that run this system. And at the moment, we should be calling for the dismissal of the Child Protection Minister in Victoria as well as their Chief Executive. It is appalling to think that that the families of these children in particular are suffering in the way that they are because of the loss of their children because of the failure of the department to act. Now, we also know that there are parents who have had their children taken away from them for reasons which are, well, because they've probably been abused in some way. And we understand that the system is in place to be able to protect those children. So we have two ends of the spectrum. We have the parents who have their children taken away because of neglect and some minor issues, usually around mental health. And then we have issues which relate to more serious forms of abuse, where parents are incapable of caring for their children. But at the end of the day, it's the department who step in. They say that these children need to be removed, or they investigate the situations relating to these children and make a decision about whether that children can remain with this family or not. In one particular instance, they allowed a child to remain with the grandfather, and as a result of that decision, the child died. Now, the child died because they say of SIDS, but my guess is that it's a bit more serious than that in terms of what may have happened that caused the child to die, the lack of care that the child had, the inability of the grandparent to lay the child appropriately in the cot or whatever the case might be. But regardless of all of that, children are dying at the hands of the child protection system. And I in the past actually have thought that of all the states, Victoria was probably the best, mainly because we don't seem to hear all that much from Victorians necessarily about what's been happening there, even though we as a political party do have a very strong executive working to get some candidates up in Victoria. And now perhaps some of you might be motivated to join us in this particular battle, because it's always has been serious, and it's particularly serious now. So I just want to go to an article that was in the Australian a couple of days ago, and this one focuses on family violence in particular. And what it says here is that while child protection demonstrated good practice in responding to family violence in some cases, only one case demonstrated evidence that child protection liaised with a specialist family violence practitioner. Now, the reason why I've highlighted that is that each one of us knows that, or those people that work within this particular sector know that it's really important to attach a family to, or connect a family with a service that's going to be able to help them through whatever their difficulties may be. In this case, it was domestic violence. However, the services were not offered to the parents in this particular case, apparently, or aren't offered to enough parents in cases as well. And one of the issues I have had for many, many years is that social workers themselves who work within the department usually don't have the experience to cover all the areas that are necessary. and they need to have specialist services that come in and assist families. But they are often reluctant to do that. I have no idea why. Probably because maybe they consider that families are inadequate, that they themselves, that is the workers, are able to provide all these range of services even though they don't have the expertise to do so. And that other people may offer different opinions than the ones they hold about what is in the best interest of the family and the children, so they choose not to get that sort of information from these other so-called experts. So I guess there are lots of reasons why they might choose to do that, and I have no real idea as to what that might be. I can only suggest that perhaps these are the reasons. Now, it also says in 2 cases, the report concluded there was no evidence of a comprehensive assessment, despite family violence being referred to a protective concern. So there was no evidence of a comprehensive assessment, which is what these people are supposed to be doing when they're assessing the well-being of a child. So that in itself is a major concern. I think it's important to understand that we need professionals doing this job who actually care about kids, who aren't more concerned about their backside, risk aversion, and other things that may get in the way, including managers and supervisors and others and senior social workers who also don't seem to know what they're doing. So we need to change this system in a way whereby we're protecting kids. And these are really good examples of where we're failing in this particular area. Now, the other one that I wanted to look at was this the one? That's right. So there was also another report, also in the Australian, which states that the 59-page report stamped, this is interesting, stamped confidential. Now, whatever happened to transparency? When you have a report of this nature that concerns all of us, it concerns kids for Christ's sake, why aren't we doing something about it? And that it was not to be distributed to the public, because clearly the information in this report was too serious to be able to talk to the public about. So here we have them trying to, the government trying to withhold this information from you and I so that we can't be critical of what they've been doing. But it did examine these 65 deaths that had occurred, and the findings were pretty damning about the department's response to that. The report criticised child protection for being too slow in dealing with aspects of the 6 cases who were all alleged aged under 2 when they died. And there is further down, there is a key criticism area. So if you can get hold of the Australian and have a look at this, it's very helpful. But the important thing is that the inquiry found that child protection was too often focused on monitoring compliance rather than understanding and responding to the parents' underlying support needs. So this comes back to this other issue that we're talking about in terms of domestic violence, their inability to be able to provide the services required for parents so that they could parent better and deal with the issues that sit in their lives. This is a distinct failing of the child protection system around Australia, not just Victoria, but everywhere, because social workers seem to think that they're the holy grail, they're omniscient, they have all the answers, but they don't. And that we need to be able to demonstrate to them that this stuff is outrageous, and that we're becoming angry over the fact that so many kids have died under their watch. Now, there also was a report on the by Peter Credlin, and I'd hate to admit this, but I try not to play Peter Credlin stuff because I think she's an obnoxious human being, but and she's so hypocritical. But she did do this she spoke about this particular issue in terms of the 65 kids' death, and though. Given what I've just said, I'm going to play the whole lot, so it's about 7 minutes. But at the end, listen to what the reporter says, because That contradicts everything I've just said. Listen to this.
Shocking new statistics show 65 boys and girls known to child protection authorities in Victoria died in 2019-2020. 65 children. That's more than one a week. It's beyond heartbreaking. According to data released by the Victorian Coroner's Court, 26 of those 65 fatalities involved a boy or a girl in active contact with authorities. It comes as a secret report by the Commissioner for Children and Young People, obtained by the Australian newspaper, reveals the Victorian child protection system is overwhelmed, with authorities too slow to intervene to help at-risk children. For more on this, I'm joined now from Melbourne by the journalist who broke this important story, the Australian's Victorian editor, Damon Johnson. Damon, you label this a crisis in Victoria's welfare services. How bad is it?
Good evening, Peter. Look, it's a scandal. This has been going on for years and it just hasn't been fixed. What we revealed, as you just reported, was that in 2019-2020, 65 children aged from infants to 18-year-olds died whilst in the care or whilst known to the very organisation, the Child Protection Authority, that's meant to keep them safe from their vulnerable circumstances at home. So this is just not good enough. And the coroner compiled that data at our request. It wasn't released as part of some normal reporting service to Parliament. They had to spend weeks manually going through each of their child death files at our request. They were good enough to come back to me with that data. As you said, separately, we obtained a highly confidential report from the Children's Commissioner, which is a government-funded watchdog, and that was scathing of the department's handling of child protection. And I'll read you just one section from that confidential report. It concluded that child protection's assessment and intervention was often delayed, in some cases for months, leaving young children in vulnerable situations. And that's the key. The fact is the kids they're meant to keep safe, because of their own incompetence or lack of resourcing, were left very vulnerable.
Yeah, we're talking about 26 of the young boys and girls who died were in active contact with Child Protection Services. I have to say, the fact that you had to go to the coroner to get these statistics pulled out from their material, it's not reported in the same way, the coronial statistics in Victoria, from what I can tell, as I've seen in other jurisdictions. We know that the statistics in relation to suicide coming out of the lockdowns in Melbourne, we're all looking for those statistics. We haven't seen them out there yet. That's also a concern. In the report, there's a story about baby M. Can you tell us what happened to this little boy?
Okay, so baby M was a 15-month-old boy who remarkably and tragically was left in the welfare or the care of his grandfather after his mother abandoned him at birth. Now, unfortunately for baby M, his grandfather was an ice user, prone to domestic violence and various other behavioural problems. Now, the Department of Child Protection conducted 5 separate investigations into his circumstances, his welfare, whether he was in good care. And on each occasion they closed the file but left him with the grandfather as the primary carer. Now, unfortunately, baby M died at 15 months old of suspected SIDS. So this was a case that was contained in that highly confidential report that we obtained and revealed in Saturday's Australian. So it wasn't tabled in Parliament, it wasn't revealed as some normal reporting mechanism. This is something that the public needed to know because the system that's meant to protect the kids is not working.
This is my point, though, about the transparency of these sorts of reports and coronial data coming out of Victoria. The fact that you had to put into the newspapers this secret report to have this conversation that we're having tonight, I think damns or condemns the Andrews government. The report that you have, this secret report from the Commissioner, does it provide any light about how these problems can be fixed?
Not really. It just talks in terms of, it acknowledges that the frontline child protection workers are being overwhelmed by demand. This is leading to delayed and sometimes poor decisions. You have to acknowledge that these are very complex, dynamic families that child protection are working with. not all child protection workers, are flawed or wrong. Many of them work hard. Many of them are very dedicated to the families they're trying to protect and the kids they're trying to protect. However, what some of them have told me is that there are cultural problems within the sector, and that is that there's a predetermined disposition to look after the parents' rights first and the vulnerable kids second. And this is also something that's reinforced by the Children's Court, which some child protection workers, in fact, refer to as the Parents' Court, because...
Now, I just need to say that there are a couple of things. Number one is I love the way Credlin had to have a shot at the Andrews government over the lockdown and people committing suicide. I don't know what the figures are, statistics, neither does she. So she decided to have a crack at them over that. And the other one that it happens on the Andrews watch. I've got a flash for you, Peter Credlin. This has been happening long before the Labor Party took over, and it's a Liberal Party and a Labor Party problem. So don't go off blaming Andrews' government. It's everybody's problem. And the final thing was that why the notion that it is the Parents' Court, the Children's Court in Victoria, is bizarre to me, because I don't think there would be a parent who's had their children removed that would necessarily said that the court did them any favours. So that's crap. And I don't know where he got that from. I read his article. It wasn't in his reporting. His reporting was quite critical and factual about the report that he got hold of. So I don't know where that came from. But I just want to finish by saying that every one of us should be concerned about the number of deaths that have happened. And I'm sure that this may be reflected in Victoria, and we're talking about Victoria now, but my guess is this is happening everywhere, every day. So, on average, that's a death a week, just over a death a week. And that should be something that should scare all of us, that the system, the people that work within the system are inadequate enough that they cause the death of kids, and that they're so inadequate that they're unable to refer these parents to appropriate services. I have heaps of people that I work with that will tell me that the department have done bugger all for them in terms of referral or assisting them. They've had to go out and find whatever services they needed themselves. And that's because most of these social workers, not all, but most of the social workers are inadequate, profoundly inadequate in terms of their capabilities to do the job that they're supposed to do. So I just want us now to focus. If you've got any comments, could you please make them below? Let us know what you think about the number of deaths, any death that happens in child protection system. Any ideas that you have about how we as a political party can help to understand, to work with, to develop policies to confront this particular problem. And remember that we want more and more of you to join us so that we can all join this fight to ensure that the outcomes for children are better than dying. Thanks everybody. Take care. Look after yourselves and be safe.